In a century of animated cinema, the importance of animator Max Fleischer cannot be overstated. Fleischer, who created Betty Boop and whose studio produced the original Popeye and Superman cartoons, was also the inventor of the rotoscope. You may have grown up watching cartoons of his era on broadcast television or VHS, but it turns out those copies are often far from the clarity and quality of the original animation. The team at Fabulous Fleischer Cartoons Restored, founded by Max Fleischer's granddaughter Jane, is on a mission to restore the films of Max Fleischer and bring them to new audiences. It's an ambitious task that requires not only the film scanning technology and artistic expertise in reviving an animated short frame by frame, but also finding the rare prints and yet rarer camera negatives to piece together these priceless works of cinema history. We visited the team and restoration expert Steve Stanchfield at Blackhawk Films, a film scanning and restoration facility in Southern California, to learn about this process and watch a classic Koko the Clown short brought back to life.
When I first started being really interested in the old cartoons, the big thing I discovered is there were people that actually had 16 millimeter and 35 millimeter prints. And not only that, they sold them, they traded them. You never knew who had what.
Yeah.
So what's been astonishing now is that there's the ability to scan this stuff and restore this stuff.
And when you say some of these are found, it's a whole process that, of finding them in the hands of collectors, finding them in archives, orphan films where maybe we don't know who owns the rights necessarily.
If you're trying to restore a series of films, you have to figure all of that stuff out. Yeah. You have to figure out where the bodies are buried, where the best copy is. It might be in an archive in France. It might be at the Library of Congress. It might be in a collector's house in Great Britain. You never know where it is.
It's a treasure hunt, really. Yeah. In some cases, it may be the only copy of a certain quality or a certain print gauge of that piece of art.
Frequently, it's the only copy. It's the only 35 millimeter of something. With a company like Disney or with Warner Brothers, they've been careful and they've taken care of their negatives. But there's lots of things like the Max Fleischer silent films that are just orphaned. There wasn't anybody that still owns them. They're in the public domain. So you can find 16 millimeter copies of a lot of them. But once in a while, a 35 will show up. And this one just showed up, actually.
So what are we looking at today?
So this is a copy of Birthday. This is a 1930 print of a 1924 cartoon.
Almost 100 years old.
Almost 100 years old. What you have is a print that was actually shown theatrically. So it's on cellulose nitrate stock. And nitrate is flammable. Basically, it's kind of gunpowder.
Yeah.
The way that the reason that it's made out of nitrate is because it was a cheap material, and it was one of the first really flexible materials. Acetate was invented right around the same time, but cellulose nitrate was a quarter of that cost. So everyone made nitrate,
and that's the benefit of that is that maybe they made a lot of copies back then, but then maybe not a lot survived.
Not too many survived, and they wouldn't make as many as you would now conventionally. And now there's digital, so you don't have to worry about that. But a film wouldn't open wide in the same way. They would make a cartoon and it would travel from theater to theater, gathering dust and dirt and losing frames along the way. Yeah. So this one here is print of Birthday.
Okay, so I see 35 millimeter.
Yeah. And if you see how there's these little marks on here?
Yeah, like it looks like just spacing almost.
Yeah, each one of those is a cement splice. And so there will be frames missing from each of those sections. So when you're lucky, there isn't a whole lot missing, but sometimes there's a lot missing.
And that would happen over the course of 80 years here of wanting to project this and damage happening to individual frames.
It probably mostly happened in 1930, just from being carried around. If you can see, it's pretty beat up.
Koko's Birthday, Koko Classic Clown.
Kodak put an edge code on the side here. So there's that code there, those little numerals are from 1930. So it shows that the print was actually made that year. And then what you see here, there is the soundtrack of the film, which is optically printed.
Yes.
So the very, very early years of sound. Now the cartoon was made silent originally. So in order to add the sound, they actually took away part of the picture of the silent aperture. So this print's actually missing a little bit of the frame. It's probably a little bit more complete in 16 millimeter, but the image,
you get the sound as well.
And you get the 1930 reissue soundtrack here, which is probably unique to this print. Here at Blackhawk, they can scan the sound better than anywhere, and so they can get every little nuance out of it. And if the soundtrack has a misadjustment, they can also adjust the sound head to make sure to match that. And this is the thing about working with this particular kind of material. You almost need people that are just crazy geeks about these things, because a large scanning facility, although they do deal with old material, they often don't know as much as the little more boutique places, which is why the best work happens on these particular rare materials. Best work happens with people that love the material and care about what they're doing. Because the film is so brittle already, and because there's so many broken sprockets, you don't want one of those to catch and just rip down the center of the film or anything.
Gosh.
So you have to do everything you can to try to make it run as decent as you can in scanning. And this involves cleaning the film, and here they'll clean the film as well. It involves going through it by hand, as Nicholas is doing right now.
That is a manual process. And I see he's looking at a splice right there. And Nicholas, are you kind of evaluating the strength of that connection?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. Like, I don't want any splice to unglue while I'm scanning it. So I just want to make sure that everything is as strong as it can be.
Steve, when we looked at the reel here and we saw the little bumps that represented a splice.
Yeah, that's all of those splices that you're seeing right here.
How many splices could a film like this have?
I think I counted 137 in this film.
Wow.
So it's a little splicey, but there's not 500.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen worse.
They've seen worse. They've seen it all. And if there is a splice that looks like it's weak, where they don't feel comfortable running it through a machine, what's the process?
Well, then Nicholas will have to repair it. And one of the ways to do it is to use a tape, an archival tape. Another way is to actually repair it with glue, the way it was made originally. So
it's interesting that you can see the frames going past, and this being a print, for a theatrical showing of this, even the first couple frames were not of this short.
There's another piece of random film on the front of this one. So often projectionists would end up keeping these. Print was discarded at the end. Who knows how it would get into a collector's hand. Sometimes the film exchange would have it. Sometimes it was just left at a theater. But a film collector would eventually gather a lot of these things, keep some of them, toss others. You never know what you get. Okay. I've gotten reels with 4 cartoons on them. And I've gotten reels with pieces of cartoons on them.
Nicholas, I see you're taking scissors to it, and I know it's probably something you do all the time. It's making me nervous because it's it's physical alteration of the reel here. But what are you doing?
Yeah, what I'm doing is I'm making sure that the perforations that are already broken don't get stuck in the machine or don't get worse during the scanning or cleaning process. So I'm actually making them into a better shape so it runs smoothly in the machine. Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this is just from your experience of seeing the physical damage of a perf.
The thing is, you don't want any of that film to get caught in any cog in those machines, because it can make a mess. You can actually tear down a good amount of film if you let things like that. So yeah, basically you just want to make sure that everything runs smoothly in the machines.
A very painstaking process. What is this machine that Nicholas is running the film through right now?
So this is the top of the line laser graphics machine. Laser Graphics is a company that makes some of the finest scanners in the world. And a laser graphics director allows you to scan film at up to 10K.
It says 10K.
It says 10K right on it.
Is that beyond what detail you could resolve on a 35mm print?
You will have people debate that forever.
Right.
Film is probably most Academy aperture film is probably 3K, honestly.
Yeah.
But there's lots of people who say that they'll get a much finer quality out of it. And I've seen beautiful elements look amazing at 10K though. So yes, And we're working in preservation, so you don't know how long this material is going to last.
Yeah.
Is it going to be here forever? Probably not.
Right.
You know?
Well, let's take a look at the screen here. So, Nicholas, what resolution are you scanning here at?
I'm going to scanning at 5K right now.
5K. So this is the perf right here.
Yeah, this is the
blown
perf.
up.
So you have to be aware of the fact that this is like probably 1 millimeter
Right.
wide. So that's a pretty awesome resolution. And here we have the full.
So that's the audio.
Yeah,
right
that's
there.
the soundtrack.
So the scanner doesn't align those sprockets with anything but the actual camera. So it uses a visual it uses a visual to get all of that stuff in alignment. So if the film is a little bit shrunk, or if there's a wave with it, it can correct that to a degree. And the diffusion on the lenses allows it to capture the picture, but not catch all the abrasions on the film.
You're talking about in real time, the computational processing for what the preview that we're getting and what it sends to you is compensating for the physical nuances and differences from frame to frame through an entire reel.
And the actual laser graphics scanner also checks to make sure that the light is perfectly even in every spot.
Oh, wow.
So that you get as even of a scan, regardless of what the source looked like. So you get as pure of a copy of the scan as you could possibly get.
Which I'm sure for the restoration part of it, you're not changing gamma levels on a frame-by-frame basis. You're starting off with something cleaner.
You want a raw scan to not get crushed too much, and you don't want it to get blown out either. The Fleischer's animated on paper, and what's kind of neat about it is, besides that there's dust and dirt on the film, sometimes you get little ink spots on the actual drawings. They also would slash the paper so that they could keep one image on and replace one part of it. Sometimes you can see the slashes that they did around things. They were really trying to avoid using a process that Bray had come up with, which was the cell system. Once in a while, these will use cells. But the reason they tried to avoid using that system is so they didn't have to pay the license, to use it all the way through a film.
Yeah, animated on paper, they've been photographing the paper and here compositing with live action that they filmed as well.
Yeah, the Fleischers were really innovative in how they handle film. And what's odd is how few of the Kokos can be seen today. We're trying to change that.
How does it feel when you get a chance to look over the shoulder and watch a film being scanned, for the first time when you pull out of archive or borrow it from a collector?
I really love seeing what we get. This particular system, we get such pretty pictures. It's hard to believe that we can get it back, especially when it's nitrate and it's a beat up, it's a gift.
And films are made to be seen. Like you said, some of these may not have been run through any type of system or projector or scanner for over 50 years.
Oh, yeah. Oh, easily. Well, a collector will get the film and run it on a projector. He'll just go, because if something happens,
So a film like this is scanned 6 frames a second, 3 frames a second. You get a massive amount of data on a drive that then gets brought to the restorer like you to run through.
Yeah, then you have a hard drive full of this stuff. And so it can either be compiled into a QuickTime movie, and they do that over here a lot of the time for me. And or it's a DPX sequence. I'll usually get both, and we'll keep the original PIC files as a backup. And then we'll make a 4K QuickTime of it and bring it into a restoration program.
Can we take a look at that?
Yeah. This one ends in kind of an astonishing scene where they've actually done stop motion of wallpaper.
Yeah, this is all stop mo.
Pretty cool.
All
that's
frame
so
by
fun.
frame. Yeah, all frame by frame.
So every frame they'd have to step in, move it, run out,
yes.
step in, move it.
Yeah,
And there's no armature underneath that?
No, nothing. They're just
Rolling it out.
just roll it
yeah.
out.
I get a sense this is one of the big joys of the restoration process is rediscovering pieces and watching it and just enjoying the content, the art for what it is.
I love watching other people watch these films. I love showing films. I kind of see this because we don't have little tiny revival houses anymore. We don't have college campuses showings in the same way that we used to. So I see this, what we're doing digitally, as being the new version of that.
And you
way to
use
share.
these in your classes, Do you
Yes,
not? Do you show
yeah.
them to your students?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love the idea that now other people can do that too. You know, accessibility is everything, because it shouldn't be just a handful of us enjoying them. It should be available to everybody.
Right.
And when you go through frame by frame and you look for the flaws, you look for dirt, you know, how do you gauge how much you want to pull back and what becomes the final version of a frame?
Well, to me, it makes no sense to make these a brand new film. I like the idea of them looking really good, but I feel like these are things that were made on film. They're part of that era, that we should try to preserve that as much as anything else. I don't think that we should be altering what the film looked like beyond making it a very, very nice copy. That's my
The
thoughts.
film look is not bad, but sometimes they can get too clean.
Yeah.
And then it's not a film anymore.
Well, that's the thing is, I don't want the backgrounds to be stilled. I want there to be a natural look, you know, because they looked wonderful like that, and the filmmakers knew that that's what they were making. So
This is a great example of even within one film, there are so many different types of animation. Do you approach restoration like even different between the different formats, between stop motion, live action? You're looking for different things to perhaps clean up?
well, I just want a good picture. And live action films, sometimes you'll get a lot more pocky marks and various things.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get it pretty clean, I'm happy. I had to hang up my perfectionist hat pretty early doing it, because you're never going to get it so perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine, and when I have people clean up films with me, the first big thing they'll do is spend way too much time. They'll spend a day on a second or a second and a half or something, and then we'll have to be realistic and say we can't do that
Like
much.
they'll go through every little frame and pick
Yeah.
these white spots out
Yeah.
and try and cover them all up.
Actually,
That's-
hey,
that's time-consuming,
let's
you
get rid of those though.
You did it.
See. So when you run an there's the dirt here, and when we run an auto pass on it, it gets rid of a
does it
lot of it.
automatically.
Is
And
it
so-
pulling data from the frames around
The
it?
frame before and the frame after.
Yeah.
The hardest thing about it is it will now start to erase things in these parts.
Because it doesn't know
Yeah, it doesn't know the
the
difference.
context is
Yeah,
different.
you don't
So if we
want
go
to lose
here,
your drawing.
See where it erased? So then we can just delete those and put them back.
Very good.
And so this becomes your whole trick, is to try to figure out what it erased without, see, it erased
right.
his mouth there, erased a little of his foot there. When I check here, like, look at all of that.
Wow. So this is a great example.
So there's where all the dust and dirt is.
Ah,
Now, if we
And
go
that's the
back a
system
layer,
recognizing it.
see, and there's the uncleaned version. So
And
that's
the clean version.
so that's what the auto pass does. And you see, it got most of it. Didn't get everything.
but sometimes you have to go back and correct what the autopass missed.
Yeah. So you can go through frame by frame and find additional dirt.
Yeah.
It's looking pretty darn good. So it's an intense
This
process.
is what smooths things out, you know.
Yeah.
And it feels like a hybrid of leveraging automation and some of the technologies available and the processing speeds, but you still got to have the eye and the understanding of the source material.
And you have to be willing to let some stuff go.
And the patience for it too.
Yeah. On a good day, you can get a lot of footage cleaned up.
On a good
But
day
it's-
for you, what do you feel good about? How many seconds of animation?
Oh, if I could get half a film cleaned up in a day, I'm the happiest person in the world. You know, on occasion you get lucky.
And when you feel like you're finished with a film, is there a tradition? Do you put it on the big screen? Do you want to find an opportunity to
It's
watch
different. It's so different for each. You know, I work on stuff for the Fleischers for my own company, Thunderbean. I'll clean things up sometimes for a festival or for streaming or for Turner Classic Movies. Each one of them wants something. Each person that I work with, different producers want something different. You know, sometimes they're like, sure, go ahead and show it. And sometimes they're like, don't show that to anybody.
I think they're made to be seen.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. We worked on some films from a series that a big studio owns. And before we even started the darn thing, they said, everything is locked up every night. And when you're done with it, nobody knows you worked on it.
Wow.
I was like, all right. But ultimately, I just like the idea of them being saved. And I mean, they're not going to keep it in that vault forever. At some point, it will show up.
What's becoming clear to me is, as much as it is a technical process with the scanning and the manual labor, it's it really is an aesthetic process as well. And having Mark, you're an animator, appreciate it. This is the joy of the process.
Well, you want the good eyes on it. If you're an animator, you can catch a problem in a single frame. So
noticing,
it stands out sometimes.
well, you just have an eye. You're used to looking for that, and that's why I'll hire animators a lot of the time to work on these things, because they will see the problems.
Well, Steve, Mark, thank you both so much.
You're welcome.
And this has been such a pleasure and a joy, and can't wait to see when this is fully restored.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks to Fabulous Fleischer Cartoons Restored and Mauricio Alvarado of Rockin' Pins for inviting us out to learn about their restoration process. To watch restored Max Fleischer cartoons and support the restoration efforts, head to FleischerToons.com and their YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.